Warning, the following video will contain major spoilers to the PlayStation 3 video game Hyperdimension Neptunia Mk2. I talk about most of the different endings and certain story segments that might ruin your playthrough. If you are currently playing the game or you're planning on picking up this title in the future, I highly recommend stop watching this video right now unless you want the entire experience ruined for you. Thank you for your time and attention.
So, how's your channel going along so far?
It's going pretty good. I mean, I got 3 playthroughs going on right now, but trying to juggle it all is pretty hard.
Hey, Black Cross, where's the netbox at?
Oh, it's by my computer.
Okay, thank you. I knew a box could be so hard to open. And now it's hard to freaking close the... Alright.
What's in the box?
Oh, you know about that Neptunia series that Daniel's been knocking about, right?
I didn't know he liked Sailor Moon.
Well, every single time he talks about it, he puts in money in the box.
Now, Black Cross, that's not very good brotherly skills. If Delmar is happy and passionate about a show, you should support it. What if you made fun of Kingdom Hearts 3?
You make a good point.
How much is in the box anyway?
About $1,000.
I don't think Delmar would mind if we, took some of it and used it on some crap we don't need. Some really good crap, though.
Yeah, come to think of it, there was actually a recent Kingdom Hearts figure that I was needing to get. Oh, and a couple of games that I've been needing to get that are hard and nearly impossible to get as well. Very valuable and worth hundreds of dollars, even though they should be worth $100. What the f*** are you up to?
Or a 4K TV. We could get 3 of them.
Hello and welcome everyone to the Marr Show. And a few months ago, I had the privilege of playing the first Hyperdimension Neptunia game. And I love the series, I really do. I think I made it clear with the amount of references I made over the past few videos, but I really do enjoy the series. However, my experience with the first game was kind of different. While the game wasn't terrible by any means, heck, I loved the story and dialogue and the interaction with the characters, but in terms of gameplay, it was rather clunky, slow, and yeah, it didn't really hold it that much. But overall, I was happy with the experience I had. Granted, as a game, it didn't turn out that well, but it's not like one of the worst games I've ever played, and I had a lot of fun with all the dialogue and great jabs at the video game industry that this title had. So I was extremely excited to get my hands into Mk2. It does what a sequel should do, improve upon the first title, and I think it does its job very well, and I don't really have that much to complain about it compared to the first game, because I think the game definitely understood the limitations. I guess what happened was the first title was under a short budget, so after the success that it had, they decided to increase the development time of the sequel and just to go all out. So I was excited to see that this game does extremely well, but let's go ahead and just talk about Mk2. But before I do, I want to talk a little bit about something that I just discovered looking at my the PlayStation 3 titles. Now, I'm not that picky in regards to ratings, but the first game is teen rated, understandable. Then when you get to Mk2, it's for some reason rated M for some reason. I'm not sure why, because it doesn't have... Okay, there's a lot of suggestive stuff in it, but it's about the same ground as the first game, but then when you get to the next game, Victory, it's back to rated T. Honestly, I think this should be rated M because as soon as someone is in this game who haunts the nightmares to this very moment in time. The game takes place in an alternate dimension from the first game.
Oh, I get it now! Hyperdimension! And this takes place in the alternate...
There's a force known as ASIC, the R4 Syndicate of International Crime, a group solely dedicated towards the deceased R4. Over the years, the influence of ASIC has become increasingly powerful, affecting many of the residents of game industry. As such, the CPUs along with Netgear traveled to the game industry graveyard to combat ASIC. Unfortunately, they lost and are now captured in the graveyard. 3 years have passed, and IF and Compa managed to free Netgear and escape the graveyard. Returning to Planetoon, your goal as Netgear is to gather the mascots of each landmass, recruit the other CPU candidates to join your party, and free the CPUs, as well as trying to stop ASIC from resurrecting R4. Now I will admit, one thing that I did notice about the writing in this game, it doesn't have that many jabs at the video game industry compared to the first title. And while you do get some jabs at certain video game franchises, such as the Tetris enemies, these dating sim enemies, and a polka-dotted warp pipe from Mario Bros. The story focuses more on the character's struggle to become more powerful, stop all the ASIC members, and trying to save the CPUs. And I think it does extremely well done because I love seeing the development of all the CPU candidates trying to find the real place in trying to become stronger and realizing their true selves. One of my favorite moments in the game actually comes from Netgear and Rom, where Netgear is trying to help Rom trying to find a pen, and you get to see a good connection because they never really met before, and of course they're rivals. So of course Uni is rivals against like Netgear, and then Rom and Ram are like rivals for Netgear and such. But I mean, you feel a good connection with them learning about each other, and I think it works extremely well. And I think the character development works astonishingly well throughout the first part. I mean, the second half is good after they save the sisters, but I mean, you really do feel the connection with the CPU candidates and trying to grow stronger. But I mean, there's still a lot of great comedic gold in this title. That may not be heavily focused on mocking some of the video game franchises, but more on the character specific, especially when you get Neptune back, freeing her from the graveyard. There's a Chirper event that I think is hilarious, as you see a Neptune come in as Purple Heart, and all the sisters are along this like, is there a monster or something? Where's the monsters at? And of course she tells them there's no monster, and they're like, then why are you transformed? And the only reason is because apparently she wasn't at the correct height to go on a roller coaster ride, so she literally transforms into a CPU just so she can get on a roller coaster. And I think that's great right there. It really shows that even after 3 years of being captive, you can see that it's still good on Neptune, and just seeing all the CPU characters act like they did in the first game. And I think it's just great writing, and I really do enjoy all the characters and just seeing them how they grow, and just, yeah, I just like the writing. But aside from a lot of the characters from the first game returning, we get a batch of new characters. Some of them that I do recognize from the anime, and some who I don't really see or brand new introductions to me. Like the Oracles. I mean, I do know like Histoire, but I finally get introduced to the other 3 Oracles, who made cameos in the anime, but here we get to see their characteristics. Like we got Midna for Louis, we got JK for Last Station, and then you got this woman here, Chica for Limbox. Chica's probably the Oracle that I think has the most characteristics compared to like Midna and JK, which those two are fine, but not, I don't think there's like nearly as strong personality compared to Chica, where she tries to fit in the role as Vert's sister because Microsoft doesn't have a portable console of the Xbox, leaving Vert to be the only CPU without a sister. But seeing Chica trying to fit in as the sister for Vert is really sweet. However, I have to admit, I think it's kind of, I think she tries a bit too hard, where when Vert is too focused on like her games or trying to see what she can do to rebuild her PC, she tries to cough, like pretends to be sick and just coughs extensively. And also not to mention, she's a bit of a drama queen at times, which makes for some really funny scenes in my opinion.
Pull yourself together, woman. I shall remove you from this place.
No, don't concern yourself with me. I'm already done for. I have a dying favor to ask. I must ask my dear sister Vert. No, you can't die. We've only just met.
This is what we in the SMD call bullshitting. It is what she does.
And that redhead that we see is actually another character that I really enjoyed. Her name is Cave, which represents the company Cave, who's well known for the bullet hell type games. And I think she's a pretty bad A character, and unfortunately you can't really get her to join in her party unless you buy the Cave DLC, which I have to admit, I did not expect there to be a whole lot of downloadable content for the Neptunia series, but there's a lot. That's a whole topic for another day, but when I finally got Cave to join my party, she proved to be a pretty excellent partner in the party because I think her attacks are really strong, especially when you get to her skills. They are insanely powerful, especially this move.
Mega Black Label. Ultimate Bullet Hell. Can you evade this? Power.
So overall, the game may not have as many jokes towards the video game industry. It focuses more on the sister struggle trying to save the CPUs, and I think it works really well, so I had a lot of fun. But we know that writing and story is good for the Neptunia series, but how does the game improve visually and in terms of gameplay? Well, one thing to note is that the cutscenes themselves got an upgrade. Now granted, you still get the 2D visual novel scenes, however, those are heavily less animated and more towards during certain chipper events, while most cutscenes actually look like this, with the 3D models talking in Texas and stuff. And I think that works really well. Granted, I don't know if it's with just the English voiceover, where some of those cutscenes have English voices and the others don't. I'm personally one of those people that prefer the American voice cast than the Japanese. Not saying they're bad, but I just like the voices they got for the characters in the English dub. But for some reason, there's this weird inadequacy where some of the scenes are voiced and some aren't for some reason. And I mean, sure, that's true in the first game, but most of the main scenes do have voices, but some of the main scenes in this one doesn't. There are certain cutscenes that are actually fully animated cinematically, and I think it looks really well. But what about the dungeons? Now, throughout the entire map, there's a vast amount of dungeons, and some of them are about the same. However, there is one key difference that I think skews this one compared to the first one a bit, and that's how the dungeons look. The dungeons look a whole lot more better than the first game. When the first game, there's a whole lot of caves, and sure, there's some different ones like the pirate ship and the snow forest, but a lot of them seem really secluded to like walls and barriers where you couldn't see outside or anything. While here, you definitely feel the dungeons being more open. You can finally see a lot more scenery. And sure, some of the dungeons do repeat the same kind of designs a bit, but at least you can finally get some good scenery. One of my favorite dungeons to go to is actually this block Tetris dungeon world map. It looks really beautiful, and yeah, I'm just really happy that the dungeons you can actually see and have some variety and stuff like that. Not to mention, in the dungeons, the random battles are gone. You can actually see enemies and you can decide whether you could go up to them or not. And if you don't want to go through a whole round of battling enemies, you could just hit them and they could disappear. Although, one nitpick if I have to say, I wish you could gain some experience points even when you defeat the enemies. Like when you knock them out, you could get the experience points. I wish that was the case. Instead, you have to go through the whole battle to fight, which we'll get into in a little bit once we talk about gameplay. And not to mention, one of the main critiques that I did have with the first game is that the music, in my opinion, wasn't that good. It wasn't like beyond awful, but the music got very dull and wasn't really that many good compositions. One here, the music has been upbeated completely. There's completely new themes for the Landmasters, which I think sound a lot better. It took me a while to get used to the Leanbox theme, because I actually did enjoy the theme from the first game, but I did like this one. But the music throughout all the dungeons and battle themes and such sound a whole lot more better. And the best part, some of these music themes you actually get reused or recycled in some of the later games, which I don't mind because I really did enjoy the music in this game, so I'm excited to hear them more throughout the series, even if they do replay them a bit, because at least they don't sound repetitious or anything. They sound really good. But what about the combat system? Well, it's about the same, a little bit different. While it may not be as heavily customizable in terms of custom moves like in the first game, battling enemies feels a whole lot more smoother, more quicker. It actually made me want to fight enemies more instead of, oh gosh, I have to go through a slow battle mode again or anything like that, because fighting enemies is less tedious than before. If you played Quest 64, I know, weird example, but if you played Quest 64, it's sort of like that, where you can move your character around a grid to attack certain enemies, and you have a little hitbox, and you got the combo system that'll help you attack enemies depending on how much AP points you get. And I have to say, it feels a whole lot more better and more intuitive than the first game, because it doesn't feel tedious fighting enemies. It doesn't go slow. In the first game, to heal your party members, you can't really use item selection or anything. Instead, you have to rely on your characters to use center commands, which, I mean, isn't bad, but it got kind of annoying trying to get certain party members healed with a character specific ability. Well, here the item option is here, and while you still have to use ability points to use a certain amount of items per turn, it definitely helps tremendously, and combat itself just feels a lot better in my opinion. Now, I've talked extensively about the dungeons where you can go around, fight enemies whenever you want to and stuff like that, and improve battle, but what about the landmasses? Because I've yet to talk about what you can do in the landmasses. Well, in each landmass, there's a few different things. You got the shops, which allow you to buy items, processor units and stuff. You also have a guild, which you can do certain quests to help regain landmasses shares. But you also have an item sift, in which, as Netgear, you can actually synthesize different items. You also got Chirper, which is the parody version of Twitter, I guess, I don't know. In there you can talk to Pacific NPC candidates to unlock certain quests, as well as to talk to certain party members and CPU candidates to raise their lily ranks. And before anyone asks, no, it is not where you rank the best lily flower or anything. In the menu, there's a certain section called Lily Rank, and you'll see like certain stats of like eyes with hearts or eyes that have an angry face or something. This is your affection rating for all the characters. And this actually plays importantly in regards to getting the different endings. Of course, you got the purple one, which is the Lily Rank. That means they just hate your gust. So you want to get most of the characters to love, because when you get into love, you could get certain endings and stuff like that. And this is where that spoiler section, or spoiler intro I talked about during the beginning of this video, comes into play. There are 3 different endings. There's the normal, true, and conquest ending. And there's also 5 extra endings when you get the normal ending as well. And those definitely affect on the Lily Ranks. And getting certain endings also depends on the shares as well. Now, this is pretty much like in the first game where there's 2 different endings. However, in here, it's a lot more fun to go around the dungeons and getting the shares. As I think in the second one here, the shares are a lot more explained and a lot more easier to understand than in the first game, in my opinion. Yesterday we're trying to get the lane box ending. For that, you have to get Vert to join your party, and in order for her to join, the lane box local shares have to be above 55 or 50 so she can join your party. And when you do that, you just go through the chirper, try to get to events to talk to Vert a lot more, and then eventually your Lily Rank will raise up to love, beat the final boss, and then you get the ending. Although I do recommend that if you are trying to get all the different endings, I recommend making a few different save files. One for when you're like at the end of chapter 4, and then another one when you're at chapter 6. So that way it'll be a lot more quicker to get the extra endings. Which was a bit tedious for me because I didn't think of that. And I had to replay through the game. Granted, I was at a high level, so going through enemies was easy, but it got tedious trying to get through the different endings. So yeah, Mk2, I really love this title. It was a blast to play, and much like the first game, the story and characters and writing are strong with this one, and it improves so much over the gameplay and visually and the musical score, and I really enjoyed it. although the game isn't really pitch perfect. Like when I mentioned the shares, sometimes it's difficult trying to get certain shares to raise. Like during my first playthrough, I was able to get Vert and Blonde to join my party, but I could not for the life of me get the last station shares to raise up. It took me several times trying to get Noir to join my party and trying to get the last station shares to raise up. Now granted, when you do a guild or quest, you do gain shares for a certain landmass, but it also takes away the shares from another landmass. So it's about playing about trying to get that. And yeah, it definitely got kind of annoying trying to get the shares to raise up. Even if you do a bunch of quests, sometimes it may raise only like 5% of your shares and doesn't even do an effect. Sure, there is a Coliseum in the graveyard which can raise shares, but I didn't really notice in doing that much in terms of the local shares, in my opinion. When I was doing the True Ending one of the things that kind of irked me was having to fight all the CFW people again and all four. And I mean, granted, I know it's like a whole Mega Man thing where you got your characters leveled up and stuff, but my characters were extremely overpowered. They were about level 75 to 80 plus. With Cave in my party, I was able to blast through all the enemies. Although I did like the ending, I definitely liked it a lot more than the True Ending in the first game. But even though I got all the extension endings of the normal ending and also the True Ending, the Conquest one, I didn't like it. I really didn't. I decided to just look it up on YouTube instead of having to go through the trouble trying to play with the shares and trying to unlock certain events and stuff, as I was wanting to play other games. I have to admit, I'm glad I did not go for the Conquest ending because it's depressing as hell. I just think it is just a weird ending. I mean, I'm glad they want to try something different, but it feels completely out of place in this lighthearted game, and I just couldn't get over the fact that in there, you had to kill all of the CPU candidates! You had to kill all the CPU candidates, so that way the sword that you got can gain this power and energy and stuff, I don't know, and it was heartbreaking because I love all these characters, and to see you as Nepgear trying to kill all these characters, it's just something that, for one, I don't think Nepgear would do. I mean, yes, there'll be that temptation, but she would never do it. I think she wouldn't. Not to mention, I think the hardest scene for me to watch that I almost broke down in tears was when she had to confront Ram after the death of Blonde, and it is just a hard ending to go through. I hate this ending. I mean, if you like it, I'm glad you do, but for me, it was too depressing, and it literally took me an hour or so trying to get over that ending and trying to watch multiple hours of cute bunny videos. Hey, I have no guilt. It makes me feel a whole lot more better about myself, even though it's drenching in its cuteness. The only thing that just turns everything into even more cuter if I could cuddle up with something that's so adorable. Isn't that the right, the bonbon? I love you, Bunny. You're my little bunny rabbit. You're my little girl. Yes, you are. However, the Conquest ending is an optional ending, and I'm not really much of a completionist, so I'm glad I didn't have to go through that, because if I had to go and see myself playing the game and having to kill like Noir, Uni, Vert, Blonde, and just all of them, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't. So I just hate that ending. Now you understand why I put that spoiler section at the beginning of the video, because gosh dang it. Oh, I feel it feels good to rant, but still it's just I really enjoyed Mk2. It follows the great writing, story, and character development from the first game, but improves drastically in terms of gameplay that makes it a lot more fun and more intuitive than the first game, in my opinion. I mean, I still love the first game just for the story and characters and writing, but in terms of gameplay, this one definitely improves tremendously, and I am so happy. I think most of the other main games follow the familiar gameplay style of Mk2, which I hope that's true because I really enjoyed it, and yeah, it's a good game. Yay! And that's all the time we have for today, folks. So if you would like to leave your thoughts on today's game, just comment below. And if you want to get this game, it's pretty cheap and easy to come by, much like the first game. And yeah, I'm just really happy that I had a positive experience. But still, that Conquest ending, just... wow. Now if you excuse me, I'm gonna go take a nap and try not to get depressed in the process. So, I'm gonna go now. Good night, nighty-night. Ah, ow, ow. I hope I'm out of frame, but actually I kinda broke my ribs. Oops.